Good evening and welcome to Political Capital, the intersection of money and politics. I'm your host, Karabole Tlatla. Now, each year, the South African government throws money at education in South Africa. And as a result of a surprise announcement last year by former President Jacob Zuma, they threw even more money towards higher education, 89.9 billion rands to be specific. Today, we'll be talking about that investment vis-a-vis the outcomes of higher education in South Africa. My guest is the Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training, Mr. Buti Manamela. Sir, for your time, I thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Let's begin by talking about you, Buti, the person. You were at a different department before this. You were in the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation before this post. Now you are Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training.
Yeah.
Which of those portfolios suits you best?
Well, I mean, I don't think there is anything of the sort. If you are a public servant, any of the portfolio that you are given, you should be able to execute. And more so that with both responsibilities, you know, it's issues which I have the passion for, the passion for youth development, which was my major responsibility, you know, and my interest in planning and also monitoring and evaluation, you know, and now having been a student activist, you know, and also with my passion for education. So firstly, I don't see any contradiction, and I also don't, you know, think that there is one or the other position that, you know, should be regarded as suitable for me. Whatever the responsibility, I think I need to exert myself to the best of my ability and all of that.
Where do you get your desire for public administration then?
Look, I mean, it's something that's been there from an early age. You know, serving in youth organizations, political, the ANC Youth League, the Young Communist League, and also being actively involved in non-governmental organizations and also in student representatives organizations. That's a form of public service, you know, and then ultimately becoming a member of parliament, serving in the different portfolio committee. All of those, you know, inculcate a sense of service, but also a sense of passion for people's plight and people's desire, and to contribute towards helping people resolve their immediate challenges.
Okay, let's speak about that contribution. You were at monitoring, planning and evaluation. So you got a bird's-eye view into all these other departments of government. So you know the clogs and the bottlenecks within the Department of Education and Training from that perspective already. Now you're inside the education and training tent. How are you using that experience to better delivery in your new department?
Look, I mean, obviously the role at planning, monitoring and evaluation was completely different. It was about making sure that in this case the Department of Higher Education and Training meets the plans of the National Development Plan. It was also about ensuring that you know, those outcomes are met, you know, and having had that view, I mean, I understood that the agent intervention that needs to be made in our country is around skills development. And in particular, both our TVET colleges, our universities of technology, but also our workplaces have a crucial role to play in ensuring that we you know, improve the situation as it relates to skills shortages. So I think that's where the agent intervention is needed. And the second issue that I think was bringing stability within the post-school education and training system was a question of resources and the you know, efficient and optimum use of those resources. Firstly, resources in terms of human capital, having qualified academics. I mean, I was in San Francisco and went to some of the universities there. In their community colleges, which is almost the equivalent of TVET colleges, you've got professors and people with you know, doctoral qualifications teaching in those institutions, and that's what we need to get here. For instance, resources to allow students to you know, access the system. resources to allow students of exposure in TVET colleges towards the workplace, resources, you know, for students to use in reference. I mean, when you look at some of the investees, most of them are dependent on, you know, European and US universities for, you know, giving students textbooks and all of that. And I think we need to change all of this. So that's part of the resource that I'm talking about.
All right, that resource and I guess the banter about skills development in this country, for me, it's a surprise. We've been talking about skills development for the last 24 years. We've been talking about it. And to be at a position now where you, at the launch of the Moses Kotane Center recently, you and Mr. Mamabolo, the MEC of Infrastructure in Gauteng, spoke about the fact that we are running short of artisans. What happened to the pipeline? South Africa used to have lots of artisans that were normally swallowed up by big state-owned entities. What happened to that pipeline?
I think that's actually you know, false. We were not a pipeline for artisans. Artisan training and development was mainly reserved for white males. As late as you know, 15, 20 years ago, the average age of artisans was beginning to increase, you know, and mainly because some of the private training providers and also some of the state-owned enterprises stopped the training of white artisans. And so there's been a turnaround. You know, the NDP set the target of 30,000 artisans per year. We are much closer to that target now as we speak. I think the latest figures are anything between 25,000 and 29,000. So even before 2030, we would have exceeded that number. And what is exciting is that they are young, they are black, and they are mostly women. And that's why part of my outreach, not only through the Moses Kotane Skills Development Institute, but through the Decade of the Artisan, which was launched in 2013, that we're going out, talking to grade 9 learners, both young men and women, and saying to them, do become artisans.
I find that a very interesting area between you as the Department of Higher Education and Training and Basic Education. I think because these two are departments, I'm wondering if there's any kind of tension between the two, or how seamless it works, because you're both trying to get the same outcomes ultimately. You want to get better outcomes in the education and training sector. So how does that work?
Look, there's no contradiction between the two departments as it relates to our work. And in fact, one of the I think best working relationship is the one that I have with the Deputy Minister of Basic Education and also with the Deputy Minister of Labour as it relates to the skills triangle, because so basic education provides us with better students for our TVET colleges and for our University of Technologies. We train those and we send them out to the labour market. So there's no contradiction. And I think that, you know, the mentality of government departments working in silos and where politicians or senior bureaucrats want glory for themselves is a thing of the past. And that's one of the things which we fostered at Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation.
Let's try and bring our conversation more closer to what's currently happening right now. Now, we understand that there's a delay, that there's a deadlock in the system in terms of kids being able to apply for funding through NSFAS for next year's education. What's the delay in that funding, and just how bad are things there? Because, I mean, this is the first year that you are administering fee-free higher education for families that are earning a combined
I think I must firstly say that the decision for the rollout of fee-free higher education in South Africa was inevitable. And secondly, that we may not be able to see the return on investment in the immediate, but I believe, and as we've seen in many other countries that have implemented you know, fee-free higher education in terms of access, that in the long run you begin to change the composition and the quality of your labor force, but also of your citizens in respect to how they see a whole range of things. And I think that, you know, so, and thirdly, therefore, you know, this being its first year of rollout, it was bound to have challenges. But the challenges, as reported in the media, seem to overshadow the success of the implementation of the system.
What are the challenges, Mr. Manamela?
As is now, there are, according to the report that we've received, there are only about 25,000 students who are outstanding in both universities, universities of technology and TVET colleges, who payments have not been finalized. And this is in relation to more than 400,000 students who already have received funding from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. So that's the first thing. I've been going to TVET colleges and to universities and urging students to finalize their agreements with the NSFAS, both in those institutions. And we've been seeing, the turnaround. What is now being reported, which I believe is quite unfortunate, in the way in which it has been spun, is that the minister has said to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, can you clear all the outstanding work as it relates to the current academic year, give us a close-up report, and we will even help you to do that. And upon giving us the close-up report, which the NSFAS has committed that it shouldn't take them long, then you can begin with the new academic year.
Mr. Manamela, I have to touch on the recent BRICS Higher Education Ministers Summit, which happened in Cape Town, and the skills challenge thereof. What are we learning from China and India? How are we using those to better leverage the fourth industrial revolution? And I'm talking about practical, actionable steps.
Yeah. Look, I mean, this is quite an exciting skills competition. So we are going to be getting close to 400 young kids from all the 5 BRIC countries participating in this competition. But the key thing, the crucial thing, firstly, is that we're not only looking at, what in Limpopo would refer to as witchcraft. People designing cars that drive themselves, flying with a broom.
Witchcraft
or
of the fourth industrial revolution.
Of course. but we're looking at these kids using their skills to resolve socioeconomic challenges that confront them within their community. So you could, in terms of the Internet of Things, we could ask the kids to design an application that will help them resolve shortage of water, or how to improve electricity supply, or giving information, on electricity usage. So that's from the basics. Now, there's also the advanced. I mean, we find out that we do not have the, the dedicated robotics welder in our country, for instance, as a result of the skills competition. So it means that we need to invest our resources, just as some 3-5 years ago, we had the challenge with regards to CO2 welders. So now we realize, all right, so, and that's one thing that China is strong in, one thing that Russia is strong in, and we will then, through the exchange of resources, be able to, train those in our country. So I'm quite happy with the fact that we'll get our young people participating in the skills competition, both from TVET colleges and from universities of technology. And they'll showcase their, creation, and they'll compete with the best amongst them.
Mr. Manamela, ultimately is the infusion of technology into our already dynamic education curriculum, if you will. We need to do that in order for us to achieve what we would like to see as desirable outcomes. How do we make sure our kids are digital and fourth industrial natives rather than adopting? How do we inculcate that into a system already existing?
Look, I mean, I think there's a lot of exciting things that are happening in our TVET colleges and universities of technology. And I think the work that these institutions are doing with the CETAs, is quite exciting. One of the things which I always say when people say, look, what are we doing and what and all of that, I always talk about, the delegation I was with in San Francisco with 6 kids. The youngest was 12, the oldest was 19. They competed in a hackathon and against Bolivia, the US and Indonesia, and they came out tops because already we are doing work at basic education level, but also in our post-schooling education and training system, in order to expose our kids to all these technologies. Gone are those days when the first time you see a computer is in a CNBC studio or in a TVET college and all of that. We are at work with regards to that.
Mr. Manamela, for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.